Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Common Unity Podcast. This is episode number 13. I'm your host, Brendan Ruby, and on this week's episode, I have a guy named Bill Yan on the show. Now, Bill is actually the operations manager at a place called Counterpoint Community Services. Now, that's a service center in Redfern. Well, it's in Waterloo, just next to Redfern here in Sydney, Australia. Now, the reason I wanted Bill on the show is because Bill was actually my supervisor when I did 200 hours of counseling practice as a student last year. And, I just was able to have some great opportunities to really pick his brain. He was able to help guide me through some challenges I may have had as a baby counselor, as I like to say. And I was just able to see what goes on behind the scenes at a community service center and this just the type of great work that they're doing. And I really wanted to share that with you guys. So I really hope that you'll be able to learn a little bit from this episode, not only about yourself, but about the community as well. Bill's got a plethora of qualifications behind him in terms of psychology, human services, and he has quite a lot of passion for equality and social justice. And there's just so much. I'll let Bill do a lot of the talking, but we really touched on some cool topics today, mostly being on, I guess, how those people who are who fit in the vulnerable category are coping, and how they are, some of them are even flourishing maybe, because a lot of them are quite familiar with living in isolation, which now is, I think a lot of us in the middle class, as Bill brings up in our episode today, well, we're the ones suffering more than them. So it's quite ironic in that sense. So I encourage you guys to listen through to the end because there's some other really cool things that we talk about in the episode today. Have a listen. I feel like you're going to come out learning a little bit about yourself. You'll learn a few practical things that you can do in your community as well. If you live in the Waterloo Redfern area, you can definitely go and volunteer yourself at Community Service Center there, at Counterpoint, and you'll be able to find some things you can do as small acts of kindness, as Bill so points out in our episode today, just how important that is for our community as a whole and for you as an individual. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Enjoy the episode. I'll leave it to Bill to share all his wisdom. Please listen till the end and share and like and follow this podcast to keep listening to more cool episodes. I'll be bringing more weekly with some different guests on the episodes. So thanks, guys. Enjoy. Hey, Bill. Good to see you. It's been a while since you and I have done a little work together. As people know from the introduction, you were my supervisor at Counterpoint when I was doing my 200 hours there as a student counselor. So great to see you. Great to have you on board. How you doing? What's going on?
I'm doing great, Brandon. Hello, everyone. Good to see you too, mate. Because as we know, Brandon here survived the COVID-19. And that was such a great podcast that you did while you were going through that. And it's really good to see you again. And we also have some project for you that we'll talk about, offline later on.
Cool. Yeah, look, I mean, I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to do my student placement with you guys and cross paths with you. I learned so much from you, and I'm looking forward to doing some more work with either you directly or with Counterpoint. For those who don't know Counterpoint, I'll let you kind of tell us a bit about what's going on and who you work for and all that. So tell us a bit about what's going on for you and Counterpoint and everything in that community.
So you know already a little bit about me from the introduction from Brandon. So I'm currently the operations manager for Counterpoint Community Services. We have 3 centers: a multicultural center, generic general public community center in Waterloo, in the heart of public housing estate in Waterloo, and also a preschool in Redfern. My role there, or actually the role of the community center, is doing a lot of preventative measure, early intervention, and also doing referral for crisis for people who might need housing or family violence or living family violence or needing health support. We run weekly social activities, but because of COVID, obviously we have stopped that. We also do some case management. We have internet and computer ready for people to jump on to check their MyGov account or to communicate with government agencies, or just to have some time for social media, doing some Facebook, to do some social interaction for those who actually do not have the devices or the data at home. And we also run different workshops and events, and all those have stopped because of COVID-19.
Yeah. So that's,
So,
you guys really,
yeah.
you have like a huge amount of services that, and from the practical point of view, so people can kind of understand what that all means is you can basically walk in off the street as anyone, of any ethnicity, any cultural background, and access all these services that you're talking about. And what's so curious to me, is, well, how are things changing now that, you mentioned social activities? I mean, what are you guys doing now? What's going on with all that?
Yeah, because of the public health order, we obviously have to stop like anyone else to do social distancing. And because of that, all the weekly social activities from hobby group, classes like English classes, computer classes, to even supported playgroups that we have with families have to stop because of the public health order for social distancing. But having said that, we still try to connect with our clients by giving them a phone call, doing welfare checks, especially at the beginning of COVID-19. Once we know that the social distancing has come in place, and we then, as an organization, make a conscious choice to make sure that we still keep in touch with our clients, just to make sure that whether they have any needs, especially at the very beginning where, we know people who are panic buying, and part of our cohorts in our client cohorts is actually elderly seniors who are really the one who are affected because they can't really get to the staples that they needed, especially, the toilet paper, debacle, some of the pasta or non-perishables items that is gone off the shelf, but also to our families where a lot of the things that they need for their babies or their children, like nappies and formulas and all those, during those time are all gone from the shelf. So we actually put a lot of effort into helping people to get to those things that they need during the first few months of COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, now we are doing more on the connection, the social connection side, trying to help them with how to break their isolation when they're at home, doing nothing or just watching TV. So we try out some Zoom virtual community center kind of meeting. As I said before, calling them to check in every week, every second week, if those who don't need it as much. I can talk about one particular client where we actually do a weekly check-in with her because she comes to us for English classes. And that's part of her social interaction weekly before COVID-19. So we end up saying, okay, for this particular client, we actually still do a phone English class with her for 45 minutes every week. So, just to make sure that she's okay and have that kind of interaction, because she's shy, she doesn't really make friends with other people based on, personal preferences and all that. But she trusted us to do so. So we make sure that someone like that actually get the support that they need.
I think that is so beautiful that we live in an age where you not only as a community service, but we just have these resources to be able to continue doing something to support people's psychosocial needs, and that's so important. And so from what I understand, so you guys are able to if we look at the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's thing, you're basically looking at that first level first, making sure everyone's got their food and shelter and all that. and you're doing the best you can with the resources that you guys have. And then the next level to that, once that kind of settles out, is you're talking about those more extracurricular activities to support their social needs and their intellectual needs as well. And one thing that's interesting to me, which is going to lead into my next question, is, well, when I was at Counterpoint doing some work there, the biggest thing I noticed from some of the people there who were accessing the services was this isolation already. I mean, the social isolation, the depression, and anxiety, which comes as a result of that, or maybe first, I don't know which one comes first there. And so that does raise a lot of concerns, especially with the elderly, with okay, well, they need supplies, but they can't leave the house to go get them and whatnot. So I think it's so great that you have those services. And I guess my question to you now is, well, that's one anecdote you've got there of that lady, but generally speaking, from all your other clients and the people, what have you noticed in the difference in their vitalities?
So before I answer that, I also want to add, what you say there is very, very true in terms of all those resources and stuff that we have. One thing that I do find that will answer part of your second question before I deeply go into it as well, is really when I do some of the welfare checks phone call, the reverse actually happen. So some of my Chinese clients, because I speak the language as well, when we call them, they're actually doing a welfare checks on me, which is, yeah.
I see.
So it's fantastic. They say, "Oh, you call. I thought you're not working. How come you're still working? And also, do you have this? Do you have masks? Are you getting all these things?" And then they say, "Oh, they ending up interviewing me in a way which is very heartwarming to me, because it's like I'm trying to check whether you're all right, and end up, you are checking whether I'm all right."
And I find that quite comical based on what we actually quickly talked about before recording this, where you said, "Oh, working at home, every now and then I look at the bed and it's calling me." And so they're making sure that you're not stuck in bed all day, right?
Yes, exactly. The changes is actually from, I think when COVID happened, everyone is anxious. Everyone doesn't really know what this is. But if I may, I think interestingly, the public housing cohorts seems to, because they're so much more resilient in my mind, I think through my experience as well, and through yours when you are here, that even though there is the isolation, but they have gone through that already in their life. So it's nothing new to them in a sense. It's just become more of an inconvenience when they can't really get out. But it is a real issue for the more elderly people, I suppose, where they have more concern where they can't get out to get those staples or household items that we talked about before. But gradually, when all those come back, they seems fine. There seems to be more interested, as I say, from what I say before about us, the worker, because they know, they somehow have the understanding, I suppose, that we are the most hit one in terms of you can't go to work. They don't know that whether we're getting paid, whether we are working. So end up they are concerned about us rather than, and this is the community spirit that I want to highlight as well in this community, in the sense of how they understand so much more. The other thing is that one of the cohorts of the public housing is almost obviously the Asian population, the Chinese population. They also understand because they have gone through SARS before, or they know get a lot of information rather than from Australian platform, but from China platform, which early on they already know what's happening in that sense. So they're actually way more prepared than a lot of the other people that I observe, especially outside of work. So if I compare the cohorts that I'm working with in the community compared to the general population among my own friends and all that, when it comes to, my vitality, mentality, physicality, and community health kind of stuff, they're actually way more prepared than lack of a better word, middle class Australian, where they have never been hit something like this before. They never really know, in my experience, what isolation is about, what all this inconvenience is about when something like going to a supermarket or getting a coffee or go to a restaurant has been taken away from you. How we, the middle class, as I call ourselves, is actually way more impacted by all this social distancing, even though we are doing it, as compared to the people that I work with in my work, as you know, in Waterloo and Redfern, where they are more resilient, they are more supportive of each other, they have that real community spirit among them, and they are impacted, but not, I don't think as much as the normal general population is, which to me is quite interesting to see, because that whole community spirit actually come out in my mind.
Yeah.
In my experience as well, not just my mind.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so they're kind of the experts with all this, and so what you're saying is we're way more shaken up than they are, because well, this is kind of just normal for them. They're used to living in isolation, and they're used to, well, not full isolation, of course, but
yes,
they're familiar with kind of just doing things and going about things on their own. And us as the middle class, as you say, I mean, we're the ones who are suffering when really, I mean, are we really just overvaluing or undervaluing certain parts of our lives, and now we're just shaken out of our norms? It's not like, yeah, we may have less privileges, but we actually have more privileges now because, well, you've got more time to spend with your family. Is that not a better trade-off to all the hedonistic luxuries that you might have been engaging in, right? So I could go down that path and talk about that for ages, but I want to keep talking about a few other things with what's going on in your communities. Yeah. So the other thing I'm interested in that you told me was that this year you guys focused one of your projects or themes, I think you mentioned, on it was on isolation, actually, which is quite funny given what we're going through. So and the solution was aimed at community contact and support for individuals. So elaborate on that for me and tell me how that's changed, or
I think when we talk about that, if a listener who doesn't know, there is something called Neighborhood Center Week every year. And this year it runs from the 8th to the 15th of May, which just passed. But, if you make it, it's just to create awareness about what a neighborhood center do for normal population. You might not use it, you might think of it as a Zumba class or a yoga class, but it's actually, we are more than that. So this year, the team, whether it's or just opportunistic, but because the peak body actually choose this team late last year, before we know that COVID-19 happened. And the theme for Neighbours Center Weeks this year is loneliness, and the solution is community. So they actually did a research last few years and found that 1 in 4 Australians are lonely. And a loneliness epidemic has significant, obviously, social or health and economic impacts towards people. And by virtue, neighborhood centers are the one who actually help people to combat loneliness, because we actually have the space for people to actually come and meet each other and do something that they would like to do together, whether it's a hobby group or to learn something or even to have someone to talk to. Because as you know, doing your placement with us, we actually do case management, and also then some other places or neighbor centers might also have some counseling services like what you did with us, and also other social activities, training activities, and supported workshops and different stuff.
Here, Bill. I want to ask something. To really simplify this for me, because this is something that might be fascinating to other people, is you mentioned 1 in 4 Australians are lonely, as you say. What does that even mean, right? Because being lonely or being by yourself or independent, like what's the difference? What do you mean by lonely?
So I suppose what they meant there is that, we have the cliches like, I'm alone and I'm not lonely. So that's the difference. I suppose we know that a lot of people, whether they're alone or not alone, and a lot of people who are not alone are also lonely in that sense, you know. So I think it's that idea of whether we, especially again, you know, lack of a better word, the middle class, are doing what we do all the time, going to work, not being mindful about we're becoming robotic, and suddenly it hit us that we're actually lonely in our own life. You know, is lack of, you know me, I'm coming from an existential kind of framework. Not There's no much more meaning, or find it hard to find meaning in our life, and that makes you lonely. You don't actually share what you actually makes or meaningful for you. You don't have really meaningful connections. You might have friends, colleagues, and all that. But when it comes to something like what's happening now, you know, how many people you actually really talk to or would suddenly feel about talking to, because you feeling more isolated and lonely in your own space, even within your own families, whether you have that very frank, good communications with your family members, with your spouse, with your partner, with your friends, and all that. So you know where I'm coming from. Always being mindful about whether what we are doing, is it meaningful? Are we making connections, true connections with people, or are we just doing what the social script is asking us to do? And that's making it into a void of loneliness or meaninglessness.
Yeah. And I think, one thing that's quite interesting for me over the last 24 hours is, this idea of people being lonely and isolated. It's been aware to me for a very long time. And I'm always thinking of ways of how I can do, I guess, my part with what I know and my resources. And so something quite interesting was that yesterday I finally acted on an idea I've been thinking of, which was connecting people in small groups, just 3 or 4 people, on Zoom at the moment, and they have a chance to share, like kind of like your support groups. I mean, it's like, you get in a group, you just have a chance to really open up and share whatever, and be vulnerable, not weak, but vulnerable, right? Because that encourages people to have more courage, right? And one thing that's fascinating was I sent that out to 650 people on Facebook and another 300 people on Instagram, right? And some of them are the same, but of all those people, and now you're saying, okay, 1 in 4 people are lonely. I got one person who said, yes, I'd like to be a part of the groups. Now,
Yep.
that is quite interesting. And what it tells me is that, and this is a concern to you, I would say too, well, if that's the case, you got, say, 800 people and 1 in 4 of them are lonely, none of them are reaching out for help.
No, exactly.
And for you, tell me what it's like for the people in your community, because it's so hard to physically walk into a community service center and ask for help, let alone even just send someone a message and say, hey, I need help. So what do you think about that, and what's the solution?
I suppose we need a lot more awareness, like podcast like this, and if you like psychoeducation and all that, or campaign. As you know, we have so many campaigns in Australia in terms of Are You OK Day that you talked about in your postcard before, or Beyond Blue campaign and all the rest of it. That's why, mental health, I suppose we need, as a society, we need to change the perception from mental health being stigmatized, as you know, and we know being, in the mental health industry, to really see it as just another condition that you will experience throughout your life. So it's like having a fever every now and then. And it's okay, if you have a fever, you go to the doctor. You're not going to just stay at home and try to run it out or something like that. Or if you have any physical health issue, you go to the correct practitioner. It's the same thing. As I say, as a community center, we do a lot of early intervention or preventative measure kind of activities, and this is what we talk about. So before anything go to worse, we do early intervention, have some hobbies group or something that you enjoy that give meaning to your life, so that you can join in, whether it's health, whether it's mental in terms of doing a chess group or a book club or a yoga class or a Zumba class, just make those connections with like-minded people, so that you are actually not just taking care of your physical health, but you're also taking care of your mental health. So the awareness needs to happen, I suppose, for people. It is okay, and I think it's a great thing that what you did there or try to do in terms of having those Zoom group. I myself on Facebook are in a different men's group as well, and you see a lot of nowadays men's group crop up in terms of them talking about masculinity and how to be a better person, not necessarily just being a better man, but also better person as well. You know, it doesn't matter if it's a men's group, a female, a woman's group, or a Zoom group that you are doing, or a hobby group. The more I suppose, we talk a little bit more about our mental health, you know, being vulnerable doesn't mean it's actually a shameful thing, as you talked about before. We are vulnerable at times. So it's actually, we should celebrate that vulnerability rather than hiding it. Because, you know, as you know, for us, there's nothing to be ashamed of. We actually encourage it as well. But make sure that you trust those people that, you know, you're vulnerable with, have those very good conversation, communicate those things so that people understand where you're coming from and don't see that as a weakness or use that against you at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think one really key aspect here that comes up for me on this discussion, just to go a little deeper into the psyches of us and ourselves, right? So I find that this idea of trusting people is quite difficult. It's a very complex thing because, you know, you got the trust of the people who are already around you. And then you've also got this trust of the unknown people who are further away from you. And sometimes as life progresses, we need to adapt. We need to let go of some relationships and take on new ones. And that's scary. And so, and this kind of falls into place with what's going on with the virus right now as well, with the idea of the fear, you know, because the fear is not good. The fear is making us do all these things out of panic and whatnot. But the thing is, the fear is all about the unknown, in my understanding, right? So we don't know what could happen. So I fear it. Therefore, I must prepare for it. Okay, that's okay. It tells us what we need to do. But the other side of that, and I'll tie this in with what I'm talking about here in a second. The other side of fear, in my opinion, is faith. So when we have faith for something, that's also to prepare for the unknown, right? Because, okay, like maybe with all this that's going on with the coronavirus, I don't know what my future looks like. I don't know how to make new connections. I don't know what my job's going to be like. Well, we could have fear and regress to the bed and hide there where it's nice and safe. But we could also have faith where we take a leap into the unknown and take a few risks and be courageous after being a little vulnerable. And I find that with this social aspect, like we're talking about, you kind of have to have a little bit of faith in people. Humanity at its core are really, really altruistic beings. So if you meet a new person or if you have an opportunity to build new connections, take that leap of faith and get there stage by stage to build the trust with people. That's what I think about that. Like, what do you think?
I think two things there. I would say one thing is that, you know, I suppose I would say make your what the concept is self-disclosure, right? What you want to disclose to the next person, so you can actually, if you like, you know, like a better word, test the people around you, and you know who you can trust more by self-disclose to them your vulnerabilities, you know, in stages, if you like. If you're really fearful, or you can also take faith of you know, a leap of faith and tell someone, and then but always have a plan to support yourself if you're making those choices, and that's where someone like you especially can help in that case, right? Talk to someone who are in a profession how to go about into self-disclosing what your vulnerabilities to people, how to then keep that faith and also keep that trust in people if you can't do that yourself. So that's one thing. The other thing that I'll talk about is when you talk about the fear factor, it's interesting because in Chinese, you know, opportunity, the word opportunity comes from two words. Is is danger and focus, or when danger things come together, you have an opportunity. So in a Chinese kind of philosophy, you won't get an opportunity without any fear factor, any danger, and all those stuff. And in terms of words, we know that, every time you jump into a new opportunity, you actually are jumping into something that is a little bit fearful because of the unknown that you talk about. So I will see it in the other light in terms of, yeah, it is fearful, you might be a bit scary, but it's actually an opportunity for you to take or not to take. So whether you have to think about it, every time you're fearful of something or making some decision, you really need to think about what will you be, if it doesn't even work at the end of the day, right? But will you be regretting it that you do not actually take that opportunity to try something? Is where I normally coming from. Because if I say, yep, I might regret it because this is a good opportunity, I might be fearful to try it, but then I would never get to where I want to because I'm giving away or not taking that opportunity. And that comes to, like making friends, trusting a friend, and making those, as I said before, meaningful connections with people. So obviously, if you just every Friday go out and have a drink with a friend, but really high buy, if that is what you want, go for it. But if you want something more meaningful, that's the idea of seeing them every Friday for a drink, to cultivate that meaningful connections, to be more trusting for them and yourself. Because I think a relationship like that is not a one-way thing. It's not just about you, but you actually, and this is my experience as well, by you actually telling people how vulnerable you are, you might share something common with them, and that will actually, you are helping another person to bring out their vulnerabilities for you. And again, it's not a bad thing. It's actually, you will grow together as a thing. And that those meaningful connections that you make with those people, those will be your lifelong friends. And you hear about a lot, it's not cliche because you have gone through something meaningful together. That's what makes it a strong friendship.
Yeah, and I love the thing you said about, okay, the self-disclosure and how you can put that into little parts, right? So you've got, well, rather than come and just tell everyone your deepest, darkest secrets, which is probably not the wisest move, and I certainly wouldn't advocate that on a first date with someone. You've got to do it in parts, right? So, you say something little, and then you kind of assess what their response might be. And then, if you sense that they're kind of like picking up what you're putting down, then you can go to that next level the next time you meet with them, right? So it's important to do that in small steps. And the other thing is that you mentioned was to really just try. And sometimes when you try things, they don't go the way that you want them to. And that's okay. You don't need to regret your decision to try something. That's far better than the alternate, which is to do nothing at all and suffer in your right? So I think that's awesome. I think that's really, really, really insightful, advice from you. And I'm, just to sort of start wrapping up this today, I want to finally talk a little bit about you personally, and what it's been like you and your vulnerabilities with what's been going on for the last, say, 2 or 3 months, and how are you coping, and what's happening there?
Brandon, you know me. I I know my vulnerabilities. I won't disclose too much here, but
Well,
as you hinted, you hinted before. The real difference is really I still work 3 days in the office and 2 days at work. I work from home. It's the 2 days that is killing me in terms of my partner is actually at work as well. So at the moment, the 2 days at home, I always wanting to go in bed because I just want to do a reading and stuff because there's no discipline when you're at home. I find that's the nature of work because there's more structured. You get all the stuff that you need at work from your office. When you're at home, I'm the person who really try to separate work from home kind of person. So it's really a struggle for me to work from home because my home is where my nest is, where I play, where I rest, where I do my own thing. And for me to work here, I feel so uncomfortable, and that's part of one of my vulnerabilities during this time.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people who feel the same way as you, people don't really understand how impactful it is to now cohabit your space with work and, as you mentioned, play and rest and all that stuff and
Yeah,
recreational. It's pretty detrimental. So a little tip for people, if you're working at home, don't have your desk in your bedroom. It's one of the worst things you can do, because then your bedroom no longer understands whether it's for rest or work or play or whatever.
exactly.
It's difficult, right? So what other things have you learned during this time, or what other things in terms of your work with Counterpoint have you come to understand?
I just think, as I said before, the community is very important. So for those of us who hasn't really been thinking about what your community is about, I would say go to a neighborhood center, find out what they're doing, what you can actually help as well if you can, volunteer if you can. There are a lot more to do for vulnerable communities out there. Yeah, pay us a visit, go to neighbor centers, do what you can, or even go to in your building, go to your neighbors. You might know someone who are all just say, well, if you want to self-isolate, I can actually help you to buy your groceries, some very small act of kindness actually is what we need during this time, so that we are in this together, really.
Yeah, that little act of kindness goes a long way, and that it also takes a little leap of faith, doesn't it? Because people can be a little scared of going out there and approaching people and trying to offer those little acts of kindness. So a little courage goes a long way in that sense.
I give your listener and yourself one anecdote. You ask, if people say no, that's it. But you don't regret, as I said, you don't then regret that decision. You at least you actually put yourself out there, have that faith, and if they don't need help, that's fine. Then go on, move on, and do it for someone else, and see. And if you are worried or fearful or scared, as I say, your neighborhood center will probably is the most safe area where they will be able to refer you to someone who might need help as
Yeah.
well.
And from my experience having COVID, I actually found that, once I started doing my blog posts and that and making it public to try and inform the public of what was going on and what it was like, I had so many people reaching out to me, sending me messages and saying, oh, let me know if there's anything I can do to help. And, everybody has such a huge heart when something like that happens. But what I found quite interesting that I learned there is, well, when someone says to you, let me know if there's something I can do to help, it kind of makes me feel like, oh, I don't want to ask for help. So I'm not going to ask you. And I feel like I'm burdening someone. So a little recommendation for when you are wanting to do those little acts of kindness, ask someone more directly, what can I do to help?
Yeah.
Rather than, is there anything I can do? Because if you say, what can I do to help? You've said, I will help you. What is it that you need? Rather than, oh, let me know if I can help. So anyway, so that's just one little thing there.
And on the flip side as well, allow people to help you. If people want to help, let them help you as well.
Yeah.
And that's how you make connections. That's how you build relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, look, I've learned a lot from you again, Bill. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope the listeners have really been able to absorb what it's like for you and your community. And just to close up, can you give people some guidance on how they could potentially help with, Counterpoint community services?
Yeah, we are doing some household item drive as well, and also different project. If you want to get in touch, you can email us at info@counterpointcs.org.au. I think Brandon can put that on the link somewhere. Yeah. And also our website as well, and our Facebook as well. Get in touch.
And so for the people who live in Redfern or the Waterloo sort of area, can they walk into Counterpoint at the moment? Are you guys open to go and offer help?
You can knock on the door, and then we can make you can make an appointment, or you can call us, and then our door is closed right now at the moment. But by 1st of June, or sometime after, we are waiting for the public health order so that we can open again. But we will be opening in stages anyway. Okay. So yeah, keep in touch, and we'll let you know.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Bill, and thank you everyone for listening. So we'll see you
Yep.
next.
Thanks. See you next time. Bye.
Hey guys, congratulations for getting all the way to the end of the episode, and thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the episode and got as much out of it as I did. I love chatting with Bill, and I was really happy that I'm able to use this channel to share some of his wisdom and guidance and information through my podcast. So thank you, Bill, for joining us, and thank you for listening. If you want to know a little bit more about Counterpoint, go to counterpointcs.org.au, or you could just go and Google them, and I'm sure you guys know how to use the internet, so you'll be able to find them. But yeah, there's some really cool things going on in the community there that you can get involved and help, or perhaps you may need some assistance yourself. They can sort things out from all sorts of things, as simple as food to things as difficult as housing and psychosocial support. So there's so much there you can get help with. So please reach out if you need help. You don't have to go through things alone. Alternatively, you can also reach out to me and I can help connect you with them or any other services that you may need. But yeah, thanks guys for listening. I also am actually running some private sessions online where people can get together in really small groups. You can meet some new people and get some guidance and some help from other people who might be like-minded to you. Because right now is a time where everyone's feeling quite alone, as I mentioned in the podcast, and people don't really reach out for help. They don't ask for help and they don't reach out for help. And I think there's a time to be vulnerable. It's a time to be courageous and take that step and take that leap of faith that I was talking about in the episode. So if you're in that category and you feel like you want some help or you'd like some support, reach out to me. It's all in complete confidentiality. So don't worry about, other people knowing, or, I know that people can get a little self-centered and whatnot. Look, guys, it's okay. Self-centered, I'm not sure that's the right term. You can get a little self-conscious, and that's okay. That's part of being human. But, I just know that on the other side of that wall that you can climb over, there's a lot of growth, and there's a huge, huge light at the end of the tunnel you can see. So if you do feel like you want some more contact or support, please reach out. Alternatively, I can help get you in contact with other services that you may need. But yeah, look guys, thanks for listening all the way to the end here. Much love from me, and I look forward to having you guys back next week.